Right, in this chapter we're going to look at how to manipulate files. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring up the File Explorer. So I click here, then here. And in this particular case, I'm going to look at some sample files I've got on my hard disk. So if I go to where it says Documents, and then underneath Documents here, if I click on this arrow here, you'll see I've got something called Windows 10 Foundation. If I click on that, and then click there to expand that, you notice this expands and contracts. So you can toggle like that. So this is the Windows 10 Foundation folder. If I click there, you can see subfolders underneath it, some of which have subfolders within the subfolders. If I click there, it just contracts, and over here I've got the various folders within the Windows 10 Foundation folder. So the hierarchy is this computer, the Documents or My Documents folder. Underneath that you've got the Windows 10 Foundation folder, and then you've got various folders here. One of those folders is called File Types. If I go and double click on that, you can see we've got various types of files here. Normally it would look like this. This is in Details view, of course. If I click on where it says View and then select Details, that will give me this Details view. So normally they're in alphabetical order, but if I click here just to make it easier so I can see what we're looking at on the Type header, that will sort it by type. So as you can see, this one here called Hotel, that's actually a picture file, what's called a BMP file format. This is a picture file, which is a GIF file format. And we've got some other ones, this one all the way down to here. These are what are called JPEG files. Again, they're picture files. This one here is an HTML or HTML type file. This is stored in a format for the internet, for websites. Down here we've got some other file formats. We've got Microsoft Excel worksheet formats, this one and that one all the way down. And this one here, it's a type of Excel file in a way, but it's what's called a comma separated value file, or CSV file. You don't have to worry exactly what this means. It's basically a special type of file format that's quite often used for mailing list databases, if you buy them in. Down here you can see we've got different types of icons, and they relate to Microsoft PowerPoint presentations. And then down here we've got 3 files which are Microsoft Word documents, and then we've got some text only documents. Incidentally, the difference between a Microsoft Word document and a text document is that the text document only contains text, no formatting, whereas a Word document can contain formatted text and pictures. Down here we've got another type of file. It's a WMV file, which is a type of video file. And then finally we've got a file in what's called a zip format, which is basically a compressed file format. So it can be one or multiple files that has been compressed so that the file size is smaller. So as you can see, in this case we've got a range of different files. Now if I go to the Windows 10 Foundation folder and then double click on where it says Selecting Files to go to that subdirectory, I'm now looking at a subdirectory called Selecting Files within the Windows 10 Foundation folder or directory. Remember, folders, directories are different words for the same thing, and that in turn is under Documents, which in turn is under this computer. So there's the hierarchy, as it's called. Now you can see there's various files here. Now if I was to click, say, on this first file called About Computers, and then I go and click on, say, this file called River, you'll notice that the original one, About Computers, is deselected. Again, if I go and re-click on that, that's now selected, and the River one is deselected. So there must be some way of selecting multiple files, and of course there is. Let's say you wanted to select, say, the dog file and the hotel file. What I do is I press down the Control key and keep it held down. If I press on the hotel file here, and maybe on the River file, I'll click on that, maybe on the stock file, and maybe go up here to About Computers. If I let go of the Control key and just move the mouse pointer out of the way, you can see I've selected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files. And notice they're not next to each other. So by selecting one file, and then when you press the Control key down, you select various other files, that is selecting, to use the jargon, a range of non-contiguous files, i.e. they're not next to each other. So I'll do it one more time. So if I click on, say, charts, that deselects everything else. If I want to say charts and hotel, I press down the control key, keep it held down, click on hotel. I'll then click on something else like raft race, all the time keeping the control key down, and I'll click on one more stock file here, and when I release the control key, they all remain selected. Now this technique works in a lot of different cases. In this particular case we're looking at files within the File Explorer, but you'll find that when you're opening files, moving files, copying files, all sorts of situations, this sort of technique works. So pressing the control key down, go click, 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 and that does multiple non-contiguous selections. Now let's say you wanted a contiguous block. A contiguous block might be maybe all the files from, say, Computer Desk all the way down to River. And the way I do that is I press the Shift key. So I've clicked on Computer Desk here, I press down Shift, click on River, and you can see what happens. It's selected everything in between. So I'll do that again. I'm going to click on Dolphin, I've selected that. If I want everything from Dolphin to Stock, what I do is I press down the Shift key and keep it held down, click on Stock, and then it selects everything from the first thing to the last thing that you clicked on while you held the Shift key down. And that's how you select what are called contiguous files. Files are basically next to each other. You can combine these two things if you want to. So let's say I wanted to select everything from, say, Office to Stock. I press the Shift key down, they're all selected. So let's say I wanted to select all of those and maybe just the charts file. If I press the control key down and click on charts, then let go of the control key, you can see that remains selected, as do those. So that's how you do multiple selections. Now if you want to, you can look at the properties behind a particular file. So in this case I've selected the art file. If I right click on that and go to where it says properties, as you can see there's various bits of information about that file. So for instance you've got obviously the file name, the file type. In this case it's what's called a JPEG file, so it's a photo. You've got the location, size and size on disk. You've got other information like when it was first created, when it was modified and accessed. And you've also got other things like you can mark it as hidden if you want to, or you can mark it as read-only. Now the thing about marking something as read-only is when you open it, you won't necessarily be able to make some changes. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if I go to this file here, which is a memo file, it's a Microsoft Word document file. I'm going to right click on that, go to properties, and I'm going to make it read only, and I'll click on OK. Just confirm it's retained that information. If I right click, go there again, you can see clearly it's a read only file. If I bring this file up by double clicking on it, so the file will now open up, you can see, it's a read only file. So this is a way of protecting to some extent your document file. So let's say you had a file that was really important. This would be one way of protecting it within Microsoft Word. However, if I was to select that file and press the delete key, which is the classic way of deleting a file, it won't protect it from deletion. So let's actually try that. So I'm going to click on the memo file to select it. I'm going to press the delete key. Are you sure you want to delete it? And yes, it's gone. Incidentally, when you delete a file, it's not deleted. If you noticed, if you read the message that came up, it's actually moved to the recycle bin. The recycle bin is over here. If I double click on that, you can see there it is. So what I can do, if I right click on this, you can click where it says restore, and it now moves it back from the recycle bin back to where it was. And as you can see, there it is. If I want to take that read-only attribute off, I can right click on it, go to properties, click on this, click on OK, and it's now an ordinary file. It's not a read-only file. So I said read-only doesn't mean you can't delete it. It just means that when you open it within an application, quite often you won't be able to change the contents and save those contents. You'd have to save it as another file. Now let's say you wanted to delete a file. It's like this file here called stock. Let's say I wanted to rename this to stock 2016. That's how I do it. Want to see that again? It's now called Stock 2016. If you click on it once, click on it again slowly, and then you can call it anything you want. It goes into what's called editing mode. So I'll do Stock 2017. Click outside it, and there you go. Put it back the way it was. Click on it once to select it. Give it a minute, because if you do 2 clicks too fast, it'll actually consider that a double click and it'll open up the document within Microsoft Excel. So you do 1 click, wait a second, do another click, that goes into editing mode, and at that point you can change it, in this case back to something just called Stock. Click outside it, and there you are, it's been renamed. Now in this case I'm going to select, say, that file. I'm going to hold the Control key down, I'm going to click on these other files to select those. I'm going to right click and say, right, let's delete those. So are you sure? Yes, they've now been deleted, where in actual fact they've gone to the recycle bin. If I bring up the recycle bin, obviously any one of these I could select, or I could select multiple items by using the little Control key trick that you've seen before, or indeed the Shift key trick, which you've seen before. So in this particular case, I'm going to select one, I'm then going to press Control A. Now Control A is a really useful keyboard shortcut. It basically means select everything. So I've selected all of these items in the recycle bin. If I now press the delete key, it says, are you sure you want to permanently delete these items? In this case, when I press delete, it's obviously not going to move to the recycle bin. It's already in the recycle bin. So when I click yes, there they are. They've been permanently deleted. Incidentally, if you accidentally permanently delete files, it is in many cases possible to get this back, but you might need specialist IT help. Now it is important to realize that some files are actually too big to fit in the recycle bin. So if you're dealing with large video files, for instance, and you delete one of those, it might come up with a warning saying this won't go to the recycle bin, it'll actually be permanently deleted in one go. So be a little bit careful on that. There is a little trick. Sometimes if you want to safely delete something, like say for instance this river file here, if I just simply press the delete key or right click and go to where it says delete, that will remove it to the recycle bin. If I want to permanently delete something, you select it, press the Shift key down, and then press delete. And as you'll see in this case, it says, are you sure you want to permanently delete this file? And it gives you some information about it. I'll say no in this case. Let me show you that one more time. So with the Dolphin file here, I've selected. If I press the Shift key down and then press delete, are you sure you want to permanently delete this file? Yes, no. If I say yes, it doesn't go to the recycle bin, it gets permanently deleted. So that's a kind of safer way of deleting sensitive information if you need to delete something. It's a one-step process instead of a two-step process via the recycle bin. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is how to copy files from one folder to another. Just to make it easy to see what's going on, I've got 2 folders here. One's called Copying Files 1 and one's called Copying Files 2. So if I double click on Copying Files 1, you can see it's got a whole bunch of files in there. Click on the back button and go to Copying Files 2. As you can see, it's empty. Click on the back button, go to Copying Files 1. So let me select, say, all the files there. Remember the trick for that is Control A. So you click on one of the files, press Control A, that selects everything. So I've now selected all these files, which is in a folder called Copying Files 1. If I want to copy those to what's called the clipboard, I can right click and say copy. So that has now been copied to the clipboard. The clipboard is just an area of memory where you copy files to, in this case all these selected files. If I click here on the back arrow, on the back button, and go to the second folder, which is Copying Files 2, as you can see it's currently empty, but if I right click on that and then go to where it says paste, it pastes the information from the clipboard to the target, in this case a folder called Copying Files 2. So the clipboard is a great way of either copying or moving files from one place to another. And as you see, in the easy way is you just select some files like those, right click, and then you can click on copy, and that will copy them to the clipboard, and then you go to a target directory wherever you're going to copy them to, and then you right click and select the paste command. So you copy to the clipboard and paste from the clipboard. And it's as simple as that, really. Let's say you wanted to move files from one place to another. So let's create a new folder here. So I'll right click, I'll go to where it says new, and I'll select folder, and I'll just call it TEMP, short for temporary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these files here. So I'll select all of those, and this time I want to move them rather than copy them. So I right click, and instead of copy I select cut. Then I go to the target directory, in this case a subdirectory called temp, then right click, paste, and there we go. So if we look at copying files to now, the the directory is empty, but the subdirectory underneath that is where the files are. If I wanted to remove them back from here back to here, I could say, let's select that one, Control A, selects them all, right click, go to cut, move up one level, click here, right click, and I go to paste, like so, and you'll find that the temp directory is now empty, and I can click on that with the delete key to remove it if I want to. So now things are back the way they were. So that's essentially how you select files and move or copy from one place to another. Incidentally, there's some very useful keyboard shortcuts for this. So the keyboard shortcut for copy is Control C. The keyboard shortcut for cut is Control X. And the keyboard shortcut for paste is Control V, and they work in lots of different situations, not just simply copying files from one place to another. Now, talking of copying files, another very important concept is the concept of doing regular backups. Now, the idea of backups is you back up your data. You don't necessarily need to back up your program files because you've generally got access to those independently anyway, and the stuff that really matters is the data that you create. That's what, if your computer goes up in smoke, that's what you're going to miss, that's what you can't replace easily. So it's very important you do regular backups, and also that those backups are stored someplace else, not on another place on your hard disk, because let's say your hard disk explodes one day, it happens, they go wrong. So simply backing up from one folder to another folder is not a great way of doing backups. The basic idea of backups is you should have what's called off-site storage. And what that means is that you should do your backup, and then the backup should be stored someplace else. In a very simplest case, maybe the glove compartment of your car or something, providing it doesn't get too hot in there. Or maybe at the office or at your home, or a friend's home, or relations' homes, or whatever, but it should be stored somewhere else. These days, increasingly, people store online their backups, so you can back up using a whole range of techniques and different vendors and what have you, and in many cases it will back up automatically in the middle of the night, maybe just the new data that's being created as opposed to everything on your hard disk. It doesn't really matter how your backups are organized, it just means you should have backups, because people have an enormous faith in hard disks and don't expect them to go wrong. I personally bought a hard disk just a couple of weeks ago, brand new, and it worked for about a week. There was a click and it stopped. It happens. And it's no use blaming the disk manufacturers, because they're full of moving parts. They go wrong occasionally. So that kind of illustrates that you shouldn't just simply have a backup, say, on one removable hard disk. What you should do is maybe have a couple of backups, a backup generation system where you have one backup, then another backup, then another backup, and then you replace the original backup. So you have a series, maybe once a month, once a week, whatever it is, that where you do your backups, and you have sort of generational backups. So if something goes horribly wrong, you can always get most of your data back, if not all of it. And I said increasingly people back up their data, in fact in many cases store their primary data within the cloud, as it's called, which basically means you store it somewhere on the internet. There are enormous privacy considerations here, because you have hackers, including governments, keen to inspect all your data. So it depends what level of privacy and security you want. But it basically just means you should always make sure you've got your backup sorted out. And if you don't, then really if you lose your data, it's your own fault. It's obvious you should do backups. Again, a lot of people will do backups to maybe one of these, a little device that costs a couple of dollars, and then complain when it goes wrong. Well, if you're maybe running a business and you trust your backups to a device that costs a couple of dollars, what do you expect, basically? So take your backups seriously. Now, talking of backups and looking after your data, in this particular case, I've got a memory stick installed, and if I go and right-click on this, you'll find there's various options, including this eject option. So if you're copying files to a memory stick, don't just simply wait until the copy's a file and then just simply pull the memory stick out. What you should do is always, I'll do that again, right-click on the memory stick within the File Explorer here, go to where it says eject, click on that, and then it'll tell you when it's safe to eject it. So I'll do that. Down the bottom here it says the device can now be safely removed from the computer. So always do that, especially if you're copying data to a memory device, a memory stick, a USB stick. Now what you can do is you can compress files. As you can see, I've got 5 separate files here. Now what I could do is I could select them all by pressing Control A, and then if I right click on that and go to Send To and select compressed zipped folder and click on that, then basically what it'll do, it'll take 5 different files and it'll compress them into a single file. I'll call it backup. I can call it anything I want. And if I press return, then basically what we've got here is a single file called backup, which is in total 245 kilobytes, and that hopefully should be slightly smaller than the original files. Let's see if that's right. So it's 245 bytes. Let's click on that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Let's right click to look at the total properties, and you can see the total properties is 276, so the compressed file format of squidging them all together is slightly smaller. You will find that for very large files, especially a lot of video files and high definition photo files, you'll find that some files compress much better than others. Incidentally, once you've compressed a file, you can use Windows itself to uncompress the file, or you can install various third-party programs. So if I look at this zipped file here and right click, as you can see I've got something called 7-zip installed, so I can use that to extract the files, or I could open with, in this case, Windows Explorer. So there's various ways I could open these files. Probably the best way is use some sort of third-party zip file extractor program.